Ladies and gentlemen, News and Brews is back, but we find Chris Lukey on the trade show floor. Chris, what do you have for us?
I'm not gonna lie. The reason I wanted to be live in front of the DeLorean is because I saw Drew doing it yesterday. I'm like, man, the DeLorean was what I thought was one of the coolest cars growing up. I was born in 1987, right after Back to the Future came out. I never actually knew until later in my life that the DeLorean was an actual motor company. I thought that's just the type of car that you went back to the future in. So anyway, we're here live from the show floor. I'm hyped. It's the last day. We've been having a great time. You know, we had a great night last night, went over to downtown Disney as a crew, had some gumbo poutine. I didn't know that existed until last night, but you take one of the best dishes from New Orleans, gumbo, one of the best dishes from Canada, poutine, put it all together. Oh man, that's happiness. I hope people here have gotten to enjoy Anaheim while they're here. But I gotta say, we got another exciting interview coming right up. We're gonna have Ann Wyatt, our MD&M correspondent, talking to Etienne Nichols from MedTech Nation. I'm excited to see that interview get off the ground. But hey, great last day here. Still plenty of time to see some stuff before you wrap up, catch your flights home. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here after 4 p.m. today when the show shuts down. So that's what I got from the show floor. Definitely take your last laps. Catch the vendors, catch the partners, meet the people that you came here to meet that are still on your list that you've missed. So that's what I got to say on our final day here at IME West.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate that. And yes, we have more breaking news from the MDM West floor today. We are super pumped to have Etienne Nichols here from Greenlight Guru. Etienne, how are you this morning?
Doing great. So good to be here with you today.
Fantastic. And, you know, Chris was just talking about that really cool DeLorean over there. I mean, that's fantastic, right? And we're all kind of wondering just how it appeared. But what do you think about the DeLorean?
Well, I hate to make any kind of correction or anything, but there's going to be a lot of engineers out there looking for a flux capacitor on it. So I'm excited to see it there as well, because what's funny is we came to the show not realizing that there would be a DeLorean out there on the floor, and we brought a Lego DeLorean set to give away. So those of you who are listening, if you're out there and you want to go win a DeLorean Lego set, it's upstairs.
Oh, that's really cool. So is that in the Greenlight Guru booth?
Yes, it's in the booth.
What booth number is that?
2378.
All right, so if you want to win a Lego set of the DeLorean, 2378 is the booth number. Go enter to win. That's exciting. Thank you for sharing that.
I got a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I'm actually pretty excited to pass the test. That when you ask the numbers, I'm like, 2378 though. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, perfect. Well, Etienne, I want you to tell us a little bit more about who you are, about Greenlight Guru, and kind of what you're so passionate about with working with that company.
Well, my name is Etienne Nichols. I work for Greenlight Guru, which is a EQMS platform that's MedTech specific. I'm a medical device guru there, which means I get to work with customers. I get to work with companies to help them understand the regulations, how to make sure that they're bringing safe and effective devices to market. So that's really fun. My favorite part about it is working with people who maybe they don't understand why the regulations are in place. A lot of people look at them as a roadblock, when in reality they can be more like guardrails, not just for the future patients, to make sure that the devices that are going to be used on your family, your kids, your friends, your parents, that those are safe and effective, but also guardrails to make sure that your company won't be held liable in certain ways. So they can be looked at obstacles, but I really think I prefer to look at them as guardrails, and that's what we do. We try to make those, we build those regulations into our platform just to make life easier for those medical device companies out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And really, you know, I can understand from a documentation perspective, right? It was just so much. It's so much with the ISO standards, so much with the quality aspect of it. But when you think about this, and this is something that I've talked to with some other great folks earlier this week about, but really in MedTech, the end user, that's us. We're the patients.
Yeah.
We're the end users. So really taking the extra steps to promote quality in this industry. I mean, does that ever weigh on you at all?
When I was a manufacturing engineer, they would always see me coming when production or operations would come to us and say, okay, we were a low volume. It was for neuro surgery, so brain stimulation, and we built these pretty complex devices. Sometimes they would come out and they say, hey, we need extra X so many devices. And, it would increase our throughput, which I knew would increase risk. So I would go out there and I would give my little speech. And they saw me coming every time. They said, listen, Etienne, we know your brother's been in the hospital, your dad's been in the hospital, and you talk about everybody. But it's true. It weighs on you because it does. It's going to affect the people you love most. And we don't really think about those devices being used on us. But when you go into the hospital room, you see the dozens medical devices that are there that are impacting this patient's quality of life. Yeah, it should be brought more to the forefront of our mind. And a recommendation I really give to companies is bring those user stories into your company, because that will affect people's passion and drive for quality. Now, I've seen it it's night and day when people are disconnected from the end user versus those who see those customer stories and see the patient impact. It makes a huge difference.
That's fantastic. And I want to get more into how we share user stories and maybe how we share company stories and all that stuff here in just a minute. But before I do that, I really want to pick your brain a little bit more for those companies that are out there in the medical device field this year, and they're looking at the quality trends. I've heard that there's some exciting news coming down the pike there, but could you shine some light on what you feel like the biggest trends are for 2024 impacting the medical device industry?
Yeah. Now, that word trend is interesting. So I think of trends and fads. And so if we I'm looking at that DeLorean out there and I can't help but do this. If we go back in time to late 2021, if you remember, one of the biggest quote unquote trends was blockchain. Blockchain was going to change healthcare. Do you remember that?
Oh my God, that's all we heard about.
Have you forgotten about that
long.
though? I mean, to me, that's an example of a fad. A fad is like a wave in the ocean. Okay, if you can ride that wave, more power to you, but it's going to be short-lived. A trend is like the tide. You don't want to fight the tide. And so when I look at that blockchain, there wasn't the convergence of technology that needed to happen for that to really take hold and become a trend. That convergence being the understanding from a consumer perspective and the adoption from a healthcare perspective. And you had to have critical mass, and it never quite got there. Maybe someday it will, but it seems like it's just gone away. Whereas you have something like AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. And those, I think those are here to stay. And I mentioned the trend being like the tide you don't want to fight. I look at that. Some people ask me, well, how can you tell the difference between a fad and a trend? Well, when regulators, which move really slowly, the agency starts making regulation, guidance, and so on, that's something that's big and that's staying. That's going to affect industry. We've seen last year, there was an executive order about AI from the US. Recently, the AI Act in Europe. There's multiple guidances now about that. So that's one thing. We could talk about AI and MedTech all day long. Me and my partner in crime gave a talk on that a couple days ago here at MD&M West. A couple other big trends I've seen, though, are the proposed ruling for LDTs to become IVDs. So LDT being a laboratory-developed test. Previously, primarily the authorized ruling was through CLIA, but now the FDA would like to expand their enforcement discretion to take them into the in vitro diagnostic space, consider them a medical device.
That's interesting.
That's a big deal. It's going to affect a lot of companies if that goes through. So that's a proposed rule. So that's one thing. The other thing is the QMSR, Quality Management System Regulation, which it may not be as big as we think, but I think it indicates something bigger than just what it is, and that is it's a harmonization with the FDA's regulation and how they regulate medical device companies, and harmonizing with a global standard of ISO 1345-2016, which is already internationally accepted. But what you're seeing there is the trend to move towards global harmonization. Which makes sense. Quality should be quality in America.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, it's kind of like when you think about software and you think about like open, not really open source, but I mean, it's integrates with multiple platforms, right? And if you take that concept and you apply it to ISO standards, like we have one uniform thing across all the industry, right? Is it more like that?
I think so. One of the maybe metaphors or examples I like to use is if I'm standing in America and it's equality is quality. This is going to work on this human being. Should this not be the same quality approach that I take in Europe as I build out this medical device? What's different? And maybe there are some differences in technology, but maybe not necessarily the processes and the requirements around how I build those things, if that makes sense. So quality is quality wherever you are. Yeah, I think that's that's the example I like to use.
Excellent. Well, thank you for those insights on the industry. To wrap up the conversation, though, I really want to bring it back to one of your own passions, and we both kind of share this passion. I think we bonded over it a little bit, but we both have podcasts. And as creators in this space, how do you feel like the medical device space is adapting to creators? Because in our space, it seems like, it was a little rough at first, but now we're getting great feedback. And, how do you feel like they're adapting to that and accepting your podcast? And then also, how do we get and use this content to get younger generations involved in the workforce?
Oh man, and I wasn't expecting that conversation until a few minutes ago when you asked me behind stage. But yeah, I am the host of the Global Medical Device Podcast. We focus on quality and regulatory topics. Maybe a little dry to those who are not quality and regulatory experts, but we have thousands and thousands of listeners. It's really, I actually try not to pay attention to the numbers. It gets a little nerve-wracking. But yesterday I dropped episode number 354 called Becoming Regulatory. I don't remember the title exactly, but the goal is to help younger or emerging regulatory affairs professionals understand how to navigate the industry. Because people are coming into the regulatory affairs or medical, maybe they want to be a MedTech professional with a variety of backgrounds, and they think, what do I have to offer? Whatever industry you're coming from, if you're in aerospace, you're in a regulated industry, maybe you understand supply chain better than we do. If you're in DoD, military, you probably understand project management better than medical device.
Absolutely, yeah.
A hearty amen to any, I was a project
Huntsville.
manager in MedTech.
Huntsville, Alabama, DoD.
So I guess what I would say is, to your question about whether it's been accepted, I do feel like it seems to be a very meaningful channel. A lot of people use that medium. That being said, too, those who are new to MedTech and want to be meaningful in MedTech, just look at how your background can relate to the MedTech industry. Read regulations. A lot of people start with just the articles, and I write a lot of articles. Definitely read the articles, but I highly recommend reading regulations. Start there, and move down that direction. I am very passionate about people staying in MedTech because I would so much rather you stay in MedTech, solve the problems of resecting hard-to-reach cancer areas, and later we'll go to the moon or wherever else, not to the moon. Maybe we'll all go to the moon someday, but to Mars and so forth and things like that. I have friends who've left for Tesla, for SpaceX, and so forth, but I'd so much rather you stay in MedTech and save the world, and then we'll go places.
It's interesting because I don't think that that's just specific to MedTech. I mean, these SpaceX and Tesla, they're pulling from all industries. And I mean, it's kind of an interesting phenomenon because I've spoken with systems integrators that are like, we keep losing people to Tesla. That's our biggest competitor for talent. What do you think it is about SpaceX, about Tesla? What's the appeal to the younger generations that maybe we can learn from in our recruiting strategies?
There's an idea that in your career, you have two mountains. At the beginning of your career, the mountain is meaning. You want for yourself. You want to build your own career. You want to make a difference in the world. The second mountain is making a difference to the previous generation. I feel like we both are on that tipping point where we want to just like reach back and say, hey guys, I made these mistakes. Don't do the same thing and so forth. But I think a lot of people, young people, they want to make a difference. And so I don't mind working 60 hours a week because I'm making a difference. If companies, going back to the earlier point with the case studies and the customer stories, if you can truly tie that to how your work is impacting that patient in that hospital bed, then it's going to make a difference in how they work and how they're passionate about spending those hours and sitting at the feet of older engineers and so forth. And I think that's what a lot of the story that Tesla and some of these other companies have woven is that you can be a part of something bigger than what you are. And I think a lot of the younger generation wants that. They want to be a part of something bigger than what they are.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I see in recruiting as well. And I mean, that's a top motivator for the younger generations of, how they get into the companies that they get into and what motivates them to join those organizations. Well, that's fantastic, Etienne. I really appreciate it. I think we are about ready to wrap up our segment for this morning, but this has been such a great conversation. I'm looking forward to maybe having some further conversations with you in the future on some of this stuff. Do you have any last closing thoughts for us?
Well, with 5 seconds left, I guess all I can say is you guys need to listen to both of our podcasts.
That's right. Epic. Epic. All right. Well, thank you. This is Ann Wyatt, your MD&M News and Brews correspondent, signing off.